The Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return.
Thank you for joining us today for today's podcast. You know, we put a lot of focus on the physical and mental aspects of drug and alcohol addiction. Today's podcast is about the spiritual aspect of drug and alcohol addiction. Stay tuned.
Hi, my name is Amy Newman, and my husband Bobby and I have a business called Newman Intervention Services. We provide intervention services for families who have loved ones struggling with drug addiction. Our goal is to help individuals get the support and treatment they need to overcome addiction and start on the path to recovery. With our personalized and compassionate approach, we guide families through the challenging process of getting their loved one into rehab and onto a road of a healthier future. Together, we can make a positive difference in the lives of those affected by drugs. If you or someone you know is in need of an intervention, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Let's work together and bring hope and healing to those battling addiction.
Call 866-989-4499 today and say the word podcast to get a 10% discount. Or go to newmaninterventions.com and type in the word podcast for a 10% discount. This service comes with a free 1-hour consultation with Bobby. Hello, I'm Joni Siegel, the host of the Addiction Podcast. In 2022, over 100,000 people died from drug and alcohol abuse, and that number is growing daily. Fentanyl poisoning, pot, cocaine, heroin, and even psychedelics and alcohol all contribute to this crisis, while we're bombarded with promotions from thousands of rehabs. Newborns are born addicted, and the majority of homeless people struggle with drug addiction. Drug dealers exploit online resources to sell to teens, and antidepressant use is spiraling out of control. This podcast features brutally honest guest interviews revealing harsh realities and offering hope and solutions through their stories. We don't sugarcoat anything. Guests speak raw and real. More importantly, you'll find inspiration to understand, overcome, and achieve recovery, whether for yourself or to help others, some within your own family, many among your friends or associates. Whether you're seeking help or just a glimmer of hope, our podcast equips you with the latest insights to confront this generational battle. Many listeners tell us they want to join the fight, but do not have the time or money to act, lobby, or just help. If that's you, go to www.patreon.com/theaddictionpodcast and see how you can help. So today we're talking to Beatty Carmichael. Beatty, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you, Joni. I'm very excited about being here.
As I said, right before we did this, I just said, we talk a lot about the physical aspect of addiction, and we also talk about the mental aspect of addiction. I don't know that we focus very much on the spiritual aspect, which I think you'll agree with me. I feel is probably the most important aspect that has to be addressed if someone is going to get clean and sober and stay that way.
I totally agree, and all of my experience proves that 100% or 90%. That's the technical answer.
There you go.
Yeah.
So how did you get into this? How did you ever even, I know you do other than just people who have substance abuse problems, but how did you get into this specific area of life?
So God sent me this direction over time. I didn't realize it until, a lot of times you don't realize what's going on until you look backwards and say, oh, that's what happened. So what happened with me, very simply, is I come from a medical family, 7 generations of medical doctors.
Wow.
My dad was a 7th. And, as you have these generations, they're branching off in all the siblings, not just a pencil. And my generation stopped the medicine process. Everything shifted. I went into business. I went to a kind of a legalistic church that doesn't believe in a whole lot of supernatural type of thing, the spiritual realm fully integrating within our personal realm. And then 9 years ago, God started to put a deep burden in my heart to just go out and pray for people for healing. And I had no grid for that. I was scared to do it. I'm an introvert. I don't like to walk up to people. You'll hear me speak on this and think that I'm a great orator, but in a one-on-one environment, I just go to the corner, right? I'm the guy that literally on our 20th high school reunion, my wife and I were in the same class, and I was walking down the hall, saw someone I recognized, so I immediately took another turn, found a table and a chair and read a book, turned the reading. That's me,
Okay,
okay?
that's funny, but I'm going to relate to that because I'm a singer. And you can put me on a stage in front of 1,000 people and I have absolutely no problem singing. But you put me in a room of 10 people and say, hey, Joni, why don't you sing us a song? And it's like, deer in the headlights.
Yes. Thank you for telling me that because one of the questions I was going to ask you to do is if you would sing for us on this podcast, but
Oh,
I'll
no.
not do that anymore. Um, but what happened then is that was 9 years ago, and it took me 6 months to kind of get the nerve up to actually go do it. And what happened startled me because I went out one day. I went to a gas station, a grocery store, Walmart, prayed for 18 people, just found people that looked like they were in pain because they were walking with a cane or they had something bandaged. And a third of them were healed.
Wow.
All of the symptoms completely gone. From degenerative disc, where the lady could barely move, couldn't turn her head. Now she has full range of motion. To RSD, which is a neurological disease, sort of similar to neuropathy, to arthritis and all kinds of things that were just chronic pains, and they were gone, and it stunned me. I went back to my mega church pastor and said, "You wouldn't believe what's happening." I started praying for people, and God is healing them. And because of his doctrinal, dogmatic belief that God doesn't do that anymore, his first comment, believe it or not, was, "Well, Satan can heal too." Yeah. So then I
Oh,
went to my next senior pastor, and he gave me the same message, Satan can heal too. So
that's just
I
wrong.
it's very wrong, and, I hear people all the time, I used to go to church, but I'm not church anymore because I don't
That's
agree
right.
with it, and I totally get
Organized
it.
religion has a bad
Organi
name today.
Yeah, it
Yep.
really does,
Yep.
and so I started to realize that I could get no help from them on what was going on, but it had so stunned me. I mean, like, I remember this one lady, she was literally in one of those scooters at Walmart. She had a nurse assistant walking with her to get things off the shelf because she was so much in pain. She had lupus, arthritis, and degenerative disc, neck and back. She couldn't tilt her head up, and she couldn't move too much because of her back. And I asked her, literally just prayed and said, "What do you feel?" I said, "Oh, my pain's gone." "Well, then do something you couldn't do." She stands up, touches her toes, moves her head all around.
Oh,
And for me, it looked
gosh.
normal.
Yeah.
So I asked the nurse assistant, I said, "How long you been working with her?" She said, 2 years. I said, "Is this normal?" "No, I've never seen her do this." I mean, it was that type
Yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
what's going on. So I started to take a deep dive into the ancient biblical text because I knew that where a lot of the spiritual truths, if this was a spiritual issue, there had to be truth somewhere.
Mhm. You are listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. For more information on the podcast or to reach out if you have a story you would like to share with us, go to our Facebook page by the same name, or you can email us at theaddictionpodcast@yahoo.com or go to our website, theaddictionpodcast.com. And please remember to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a 5-star review. We appreciate you listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. We don't do this podcast because we are former addicts. We don't do this podcast because we have loved ones who have suffered from addiction. We do this podcast because we feel that addiction is one of the biggest problems facing the world today, and that no matter who you are, no matter your religion, no matter your income status, no matter your race, no matter anything about you, addiction affects you. Many listeners tell us they want to join the fight, but do not have the time or money to act, lobby, or just help. If that's you, Go to www.patreon.com/theaddictionpodcast and see how you can help.
And so since my church couldn't help me, I just went straight to the source and started uncovering a lot of things. Then, within a year, I would go out, work my job during the day, go out on Saturdays at Walmart, and within a year, 90% of the people that I prayed for were being instantly healed of all kinds of things. And now it expanded to not only just pain, but I started to see glaucoma disappear, and people who couldn't see out of their eye be perfectly cleared. People who couldn't hear, their ears would open up and they can hear. One guy with a double hernia, he was out of work for 2 years because of it.
Wow.
Prayed for him, and now he's lifting a bicycle, and no pain. And I'm seeing these things, but still some things eluded me. And there were some things, you could tell some things were quick and easy, and some things were a little bit harder.
Yep.
Quick and easy, anxiety, depression, a lot of times, all kinds of pain was real easy in terms of, I'd walk up to someone and I just knew they were going to be healed of this thing. And some of the people I kept walking into, I found this target-rich environment. It was a Walmart here in my city that's right next to all of the projects and all the low-income places. And it had the sweetest response, because what I've found is God has a really big heart for people going through really big problems.
Mhm.
And in that community of the underserved and the under income and the project type of people, they have a lot of big problems in their lives. And I saw God heal more of those people, and their eagerness to be healed far surpassed any other place I'd been. So I would keep going there. It was a long drive. It was 25, 30 minutes from my home, but it was very rewarding. And I kept running into these people. And the best way to describe them is they were usually 20s to 30-year-old women who looked like they'd been beaten up with a heavy stick of life, but they had this super glow about them, a glow of excitement and hope. And every time I would walk up to them, there's just something where God just touched them in all kinds of ways, whether it's physical healing or just emotional healing or just this feeling of love and warmth coming over them. And I found that they were members, they were going to a place called the Love Lady Center. And the Love Lady Center is one of the largest addiction recovery centers in America. They house 500 plus women.
Wow.
And it was just down the street from this Walmart. And a few of the times I would run into their leadership and their team members, the employees who manage the place. And I'd walk up and pray for them, and they would just love it because, they're recovered addicts that are now helping these women get recovery. So one of them reached out to me and said, "Hey, you ought to come over to the center and teach." And as you can imagine, with a recovery center of 500 women, they're very cautious of any man that comes on
Right.
they've got to protect
They have a
them.
little bit of a history sometimes.
Right. And so that's how I got involved with addiction recovery. That was 3 or 4 years ago. I started teaching this that uh, I call the prayer of freedom. And I started to see these people get completely freed of addictions and all the mental illness diagnosis they've been having, all their chronic pain. And as I was writing my book, as we get into this, the short story behind what happened is, as I was praying for people, 90% of the people, and this held consistent for about 5 or 6 years, were being healed. And then in a 2-week period, it all stopped. And I pray for people and nothing would happen. It's like very startling, right? It was like, I went to Auburn University at the time that Bo Jackson, when he was a very famous college football star, and there was a lot of commercials that Bo knows because he could play golf and football and he could play baseball, and he was just this super athlete. And just imagine the super athlete waking up one day and he couldn't catch a football. He'd keep fumbling it. He couldn't even hit the baseball. He would always miss it. And all this super duper athletic ability just disappear.
Wow.
That's what happened with me.
Wow.
And it stunned me. So I went to God and said, "God, what happened?" And God said, "I took away your gift of healing." And I said, "Why?" Because it was helping so many people. And he said, "'Cause now I want you to learn to do it by authority." And, we can get into some really weird stuff if you wanna dig deeper in how I understood what that meant. But he meant to remove the authority of these symptoms being there, because what I started to realize is even though these people may have been medically diagnosed with anxiety or depression or addiction, it wasn't a medical, a physical, or a mental disease. It was a spiritual oppressor in their life. And therefore, no matter of how much chemicals you take in drugs or how much mental work you do or how much physical therapy you do, it won't resolve the issue because you're using a wrong treatment for a different problem. If I have a headache and I take penicillin, it's not going to do anything.
Yep.
I've got to take the right therapy to get rid of the right diagnosis.
Yep.
And so that's how I got into addiction recovery, is step by step. And I was going to share this as I was writing my book, as God told me to take this a different approach and start to do this by authority. I started to understand how to lead people into praying for themselves, where they got the recovery and it was no longer me. And what happened is, when they started praying through this process, it's straight out of the ancient biblical text. Here's how you pray to this Almighty God if you want Him to heal you, okay? And I started to recognize it as a law, because every time I would lead someone through that process, they would 90% of the time be completely healed. And so now in my class at the Addiction Recovery Center, for every 20 women who come through it, 87 to 90% of them leave completely free of all of their issues.
Wow.
In fact, can I just read you one story about this?
Yeah.
Because this, as we get into this, this is just a really encouraging thing, because this is a typical response. This is one of the ladies at the Addiction Recovery. And what you'll hear with her story is everything that most of the people who are struggling with addiction, whether it's you or the loved one, you'll recognize this is the background. The majority of it starts through childhood abandonment or through generationally, through things that come down. And it's hard to get rid of because you got a spiritual issue going on, not a chemical issue. So this is what she wrote me. She said, "I want to thank you for the prayer of freedom. It has changed my life. Growing up, my relationship with my mom was really tough. She was abusive, and she and my stepdad would drink and get into lots of fights. By the time I was in 7th grade, watch this, she said she didn't want anything to do with me and left." Can you imagine that as a 7th grade girl? That's when life began spiraling downward. By 16 years old, I was having sex with lots of boys and started getting into drugs. That was just over 10 years ago. Before doing this prayer process, I was addicted to heroin and fentanyl and meth. I had a lot of worry and stress and anxiety. On a scale of 1 to 10, they were probably an 8. I've had constant allergies and sinus headaches for years, migraines 5 out of 7 days a week, and a super heavy feeling like I was carrying around an overweight backpack every day. Life has really been difficult. But the prayer of freedom and repenting changed everything. Literally, everything is gone. No more sinus issues, all gone. No more headaches and migraines, all gone. No more heaviness, it's all gone. No more anxiety or stress or worries. Literally, on a scale of 1 to 10, they've all gone to 0. Even my addictions have gone down to 0. I don't want drugs anymore. I have no urges for them anymore. And even the thought of any drug disgusts me. It's all
Wow.
gone.
Wow.
This is what is going on when you handle it from a spiritual standpoint.
That's amazing. And we mentioned this when we were chatting before we did this interview, and I want to make it clear to the listeners, we're not preaching about any specific religion, but about spirituality, a belief in some sort of higher power that can help.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because we know that addiction, does not discriminate. You can be Buddhist. I know that sometimes Amish youngsters who go off on the year when they can get away and see what life is like.
Hmm.
Buddhist, Hindu, it doesn't matter. Anybody can become addicted to drugs because they are also physically addicting. And so this type of, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this type of approach is not religious specific. It can help anyone who
Yes.
wants to get clean and sober and who also knows, and you mentioned this, and I must say it, to try and solve a drug or an alcohol addiction with further drugs is never going to work. I'm just going
Yeah.
to say it there. And I apologize for those of you who just swear by medically assisted treatment, but when you just treat one drug with another, you're not handling the problem. And like Beatty, I want people to be drug and alcohol free. And what he does offers us a way to do that.
So I'd like to clarify some things because this is expanding what you're actually talking about. This has nothing to do with religion and has nothing to do with faith, has nothing to do with what you believe or don't believe. This process works for atheists, it works for agnostics,
Okay.
for Hindus, Jews, Muslims, Christians, and just spiritual people who don't really claim any religious affiliation. Because what's interesting, this is the thing that really surprised me, Joni, is as I would go out and I started doing this first at Walmart on the street, right? Just in the aisles. And then I started to do it, I started to refine the approach. And I would have people go through this prayer process that rejected everything of the church. They don't even believe there's a God up there. They're not even sure if there's some sort of creator. But what I found is these are spiritual laws. And let me see if I can demonstrate. Um, for my audio listeners, I'll describe what I'm doing on camera. But I'm holding up my pen. And if I were to let go of my pen, it's going to drop into my palm. And every time I pick up the pen and let go of it, it's going to drop. And Joni, if you were to pick up your pen and let go of it, it's going to drop as well. So now using a scientific process of empirical data, I can prove the existence of a law I cannot see. We call it gravity because every time I do the same activity, I get the identical result. What I started to test, and having come from 7 generations of doctors, they're all medical scientists in those generations back. And I started to test everything. As I went through this process, nothing was haphazard. I studied ancient Bible texts for spiritual laws that it may have revealed, and then I would go and test and apply it to see if they held true. And I guided this process through and uncovered these different laws that work. And one of these laws is this process that I now call the prayer of freedom. All prayer is when we speak out loud to some higher power. And we don't even have to know the higher power's name. We just don't even have to believe that he even exists. I've led people in this process that says, higher power, if you even exist, right? And show me.
Yeah.
And they get free of these things. So this isn't religious at all. It's not faith driven at all. It's empirical data, research-backed approach to prayer that's as scientific as our pharmaceutical industry is now and everything else. So it kind of crosses out that gap and makes it applicable for anyone.
And you have quite a lot of empirical research of your own, just with how it has been successful when you've used it, which I think is important.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question, but I'm going to guess that the answer is, of course, that this would also work for loved ones of people who are addicted. I believe that a lot of our listeners have loved ones who have an addiction problem and they don't know what to do.
Yeah. It helps a lot. So, I don't know how, so I'm going to ask you, sorry, online, and we'll cut it out if we need to. There is, to go deep into understanding, the answer is yes, loved ones can help. They can't solve, but
Right.
they can go a long way of of moving out a lot of obstacles so that that loved one can actually now handle things and get free on their own, okay? There's a lot that loved ones can do, but to understand what it is and how it is, and if we want to go into more deeper details of what's going on and how these things work in the spiritual realm, we can take kind of a really weird, deep approach into the spiritual things that I've experienced, that I've tested, that I've measured, and that I see as the consistent basis on which everything works. Because what I find, and especially in my class, when I teach these women at the Addiction Recovery Center, literally all I'm doing is I'm giving them my book. In the back is a worksheet to go through these things that I've identified are how this stuff comes about. So it's a worksheet, and then they go through the prayer process all on their own. So I'm not praying with them. I'm not praying for them. I'm not guiding them. I'm simply giving them space. But during this, the book teaches them. I have them read through the book, and they're starting to learn these spiritual laws that they start to now see in their life, and they go, oh, that's why every time I get a new boyfriend, it starts as true love, and then he abuses me and we break up. And why do I keep attracting to, maybe it's just me, my decision-making process is bad. And what they start to realize is, no, it's these spiritual forces that you don't even recognize. And now that they recognize it, now that they understand what's going on, they can navigate life so much better and not only get free quickly, but stay free. And the speed of getting free, literally just a couple of days.
Wow.
Now, the class I did when I measured this, let me share. This is really cool. I want to show you some of the empirical data that I'm using with this. So for the video, if anyone's watching this, and I'll explain this for the audio listeners, I'm showing what I call an issue grid. It's an open page that I had all my students make a list of every issue that they were dealing with at that moment in my class and graded on a 0 to 10 scale right now before they did this process, and then after 30 days of going through just kind of a slow-paced portion of it. This particular one, let me share, this is a typical thing with these women. Heaviness, like they're carrying around an overweight backpack every day, darkness in their mind, mental torment, and they would list bipolar type 1 and 2. This is this particular one named Bernice. Bipolar type 1 and 2, depression, anxiety, voices in her head. Then for pain and stiffness, she had arthritis in the back, arthritis in the hips, knee pain, back pain, restless leg. Sickness and illnesses, she had COPD, neuropathy, restless leg. She was addicted to pornography and cigarettes. All of those were a 10. By the end of just the first 30 days, everything had dropped to a 2 or a 3.
Wow.
And what I started to see, what I started to measure, there was one thing that did not drop, and that was cigarettes. But what I measured is, when I took people through this, I had everyone make that list, and then I held on to it after they had listed their intensity level. And then on their own, they went through this process in their own time, and then I got the list in 30 days. I gave everyone the list to regrade it. 87% of those women who went through it, everything on their list went to a 0.
Wow.
The few exceptions, they would, a few of the ladies would have one thing remaining that was above a 0, and it had dropped by 2/3. And so these are people who've come from all backgrounds. They've been in prostitution. They've been living on the streets. They've been in and out of prisons. Many of them have ankle bracelets because they're there by court order.
Right.
And it doesn't matter their background. It doesn't matter if they were even religious. They went through the process, and the process worked. And that's what I want to encourage your listeners. And then back on your question about parents, what's interesting, because of the way these spiritual laws are set up, yes, the parents or a sibling of a loved one or the child of the person being addicted has a lot of power and ability to impact change on behalf of that loved one. It'd be the same as if I got a speeding ticket. It's my responsibility, but you can pay it for me. Okay?
Yep.
And so now I'm free.
Yep.
It's not quite that simple and quite that direct, but there's a lot of things that can happen to clear out, to bulldoze out all this garbage in their spiritual oppressors' lives and free them up to the point that they can actually now concentrate and want to go and do the final steps to get free.
I think that makes total sense. Now, if people are obviously aren't or they don't have a Love Lady Center near them to come
Yes.
and hear you, how do they get your book?
So the reason I shared how I teach this at the Love Lady Center is because I want to remove every feeling that you think it's me helping them. Because on purpose, I don't do anything with them. In fact, we just finished our fourth session, fourth week in the current teaching term. And for 2.5 those weeks, I wasn't even there.
Okay. So they just do
Okay.
the book on their own.
Right. And so that's the beauty with the book is, by the way, so many books and things on the word prayer and freedom. So don't Google it, don't Amazon it. Go to the website called theprayerfreedombook.com. So you just put a book at the end of the title.
Okay.
On video listeners, it's right above me, but it's the prayeroffreedombook.com. And the book is divided into halves. The first half walks you through these spiritual laws, where they're found in the ancient biblical text, and starts to show you through stories of other people how these laws impact our lives in everything from addictions. In fact, let me just read one story. This is the first one. This was actually the lady that opened my eyes to some of this, and her name was Phyllis. I won't read it, but you'll read it. It's in chapter 1. And then the second half is how to get free, and it has the step-by-step guide that you go through with the things in your life that may have opened up these spiritual pathways for these spiritual tormentors to come in. Because what happens is not all addiction is a chemical issue. What I'm finding is about 90%, if my numbers are accurate globally with what I'm seeing here at the Addiction Recovery Center, roughly 90% of people who actually go through this process seem to get completely free of addiction. And the reason is because it's hitting the root of what their diagnosis actually should have been, which is a spiritual torment.
Right.
Now, some of them are definitely chemical. Just yesterday, because I taught yesterday, one of the ladies, she's graduating from the center next month. She was all excited because she was finally able to get rid of her vapor because she's been vaping all this time and she couldn't stop.
Yep.
And something I said of how do you identify where the source of it wasn't a chemical addiction, it was a spiritual, because when she simply handled it from the source, she said, I no longer needed or even wanted vaping, and I haven't vaped ever since. It's been almost a week now.
Wow.
And it just quit just like that.
Yep.
So most of these things we deal with that the doctor and medical community, it says is this, it's actually something else.
Yep. It's unfortunate because I think doctors are amazing and they definitely have their place. And if you break a bone, please go to a doctor and get it set properly. But they're not taught the spiritual aspect of it. And if you're dealing with any sort of addiction or any sort of physical issues, you in some ways have to be your own doctor and
Yes.
do your own research. But here, Beatty has done the research for you on some spiritual laws and some spiritual tools that you can use. And the book is on Amazon. You might not be able to find. I could find it there because I know your name.
Yes.
But go to the prayeroffreedombook.com and you can get his book.
Yeah,
Beatty,
and at my website, it links you straight to Amazon to get it.
Yes.
It's just it makes sure you get the right book.
Okay, good. Yes, and I do have the exact link with the Amazon number that I can put in there, but I'll put your website as well. Beatty, thank you for talking to us today. I think you have some great messages. We believe that I won't say we believe, we have just found that the chemical addiction is a solution to a spiritual problem more often than not. And so you're going after the problem, which is the right target, in my opinion.
Yeah. I want to share one thing because this may bring perspective, especially for people your age and mine.
Absolutely.
I'm assuming that you're a little bit younger than me.
Oh, you're very cute. I'm assuming I'm not, but go ahead.
My father-in-law used to practice with a very famous internist back in the mid-1900s. His name was Dr. Seal Harris. And my father-in-law was his partner at the Seal Harris Clinic. And then when Dr. Harris died, my father-in-law inherited it, and the Seal Harris Clinic is still around. But he died about 20 years ago. but he would always sit his patients down. And this is the way the old school doctors did it before everything started to say science can solve every problem. And he would sit every patient down and say, health is based on three things: mental, physical, and spiritual. And so he would diagnose his patients, tell me what's going on, and then he would ask questions in the mental, physical, and spiritual realm. And he was highly accurate in pinpointing the diagnosis and getting it accurate. What's happened today is medicine has gone atheistic. There is no spiritual. So now they're saying it's either mental or physical, and there's a high probability of misdiagnosing something because so many things are spiritual. And I've proven that because by taking a spiritual process, I'm seeing addictions leave, bipolar disorder leave, depression, anxiety, panic attacks. I'm seeing chronic pain leave, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, fibromyalgia, migraines, neuropathy. Just yesterday, I was on a show with a lady. She's had neuropathy for 15 years. And on a scale of 0 to 10, it was an 8. Sitting there, I said, well, you want me to demonstrate how this works? She said, yes. So I just led her into asking God, is there a spiritual root to this? And something came across her mind. Someone hurt her 15 years ago, and she hasn't forgiven that person. Unforgiveness is a spiritual root.
Right.
So I led her to say, I forgive that person. And literally, when she did, all of her neuropathy disappeared.
Wow.
It was a spiritual issue. It wasn't a medical issue.
Wow.
She was healed of a spiritual issue, not healed of a medical disease. And that's how simple this is. It's really amazing.
Makes total sense to me. Again, thank you, Beatty. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. Once
Thank you
again,
so much.
it is the prayeroffreedombook.com. And for those of you watching the video, you can see that because it's behind Beatty's head. But for those of you listening, the prayeroffreedombook.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joni.
Thank you so much for listening today. We'll have another interview for you next week.
You have been listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. For more information, reach out to us on Facebook or go to www.theaddictionpodcast.com. Our email is theaddictionpodcast@yahoo.com.